Welcome to the fourth installment of the ADTRAN NetVanta UC feature presentation webinar series. Focus of this presentation is Active Directory integration with NetVanta UC. Let's start by giving a bit of background into what Microsoft Active Directory is. Active Directory at its fundamental is a database. It's a database that is a shared network resource that applications have access to, and this database stores information about different network entities and resources, whether you're talking about users or printers or computers. And the Active Directory also defines the relationships between these network elements and who has access to what and what they're allowed to do. An advantage with integrating with Active Directory is that applications can take advantage of that information that's already stored and managed and shared across the network, as opposed to having to duplicate it across multiple systems and adding extra overhead and extra work for administrators to manage this information. And this brings us to the first benefit of integrating NetVanta UC with Active Directory, is that there's a single user database, avoiding duplicating information that's already stored and managed in Active Directory, such as first name and last name for users, their display name, their Windows authentication, their message store, their mailbox. All of that information is already managed and stored in Active Directory. If you have an application that depends on these types of parameters, why duplicate that information? Why not leverage that information in Active Directory, allow it to manage it, and allow it to synchronize with that information automatically, so you only have one place to manage that information. If you go down the left-hand side, IT administrators can manage day-to-day properties, day-to-day user management of UC users from within the Active Directory Users and Computers console. A small plugin allows administrators to open up a user account and manage these day-to-day properties of users right within an environment that they're already familiar with. Of course, this cuts down on learning time, as well as allowing you to cut down on expenses for moves, adds, and changes, having to outsource that activity to a third party. In addition, using the built-in SIP PBX with the NetVanta UC software allows administrators to even program telephones from within that plugin in Active Directory Users and Computers. Users benefit as well from this type of integration. Active Directory linked users no longer have to authenticate with the NetVanta UC system, regardless of the type of client that they're using. Whether they're managing their message within Outlook, or if they're starting a NetVanta UC client to manage their personal call control options, or using click to dial, they will never be prompted to authenticate because Windows has already authenticated them. Therefore, the NetVanta UC system recognizes that and authenticates them on the exact same premise. Role-based authentication allows administrators to set up different roles for different users in the NetVanta UC system and allow them or disallow them from performing certain actions or from viewing different items in the user interface. And group policy objects can be used to deploy, install, upgrade the UC client software that's deployed to the user's desktops to facilitate that maintenance and to reduce the time that's spent and maintaining the software that's deployed on these desktops for the users, to allow them to have these features like click to dial, like the plugins for Outlook and personal call control options. A service connection point is also a nice feature that's included with Active Directory integration. This is a property that's stored in Active Directory that is automatically presented to clients when they start their software for the first time on their desktop. They no longer have to memorize or remember or find the IP address or computer name for the NetVanta UC server, because it's automatically presented to them when they start the software for their first time. And it's important to note that a NetVanta UC installation does not modify the Active Directory schema whatsoever. And so IT administrators can be sure that installing the software is not going to affect any other applications they may already have installed in their network. All of these different properties make up the Microsoft Active Directory integration as it relates to NetVanta UC. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a little bit about what the Active Directory integration looks like from a IT administration standpoint, allowing IT administrators to manage UC properties from within Active Directory Users and Computers. So I have in front of me the AD Users and Computers console for Small Business Server 2008, and I've selected a user, Melvin Hall, who is a new user to the organization. We need to turn on unified communications for Melvin. And this is as simple as opening up his user account, selecting the NetVanta UC tab, which is available by way of installing the UC client software on the server where the UC server software is located. And this shows this tab so that IT administrators can manage day-to-day properties of UC users from within Active Directory itself. The service connection point I mentioned is the friendly name for any of the NetVanta UC servers in the network. In this case, the server is called NetVanta UC server. If we had multiple machines, multiple servers, we might identify them with a friendly name like main location or branch office 1 or something like that, so it's more obvious to people connecting. To turn on UC for this user, I simply select the checkbox, and all that's left to do besides the defaults that are pulled out from Active Directory is to assign an extension. This user, since it's Active Directory linked, has his first name, last name, and display name defined by Active Directory. His Windows authentication, his message store, and mailbox are all defined and managed in Active Directory and synchronized in real time by the NetVanta UC system. To assign an extension to this user, I simply click the button here, select Add, and then go through a wizard, which is how most of the system is set up and configured with NetVanta UC, is by way of these wizards. And then fill in the blanks, essentially. So I select the communication system I'm creating this identity for. With NetVanta UC, you can support multiple PBXs, disparate, heterogeneous, geographically in different geographic locations. In this case, I'm assuming that Melvin is going to be on the NetVanta ECS, the built-in SIP PBX, and I'm creating an identity that will be assigned to one of his phones. I'm going to assign him extension 308. Pick a SIP authentication password for his phone, which would be automatically configured on his phone he's going to be using an ADTRAN IP phone, which are automatically detected and configured by the system. The same logic applies to the full line of Polycom phones, as well as some of our other partner phones. Clicking Finish will then define this identity for Melvin, his extension. At this point, since he's being assigned to the NetVanta ECS PBX, which is the built-in PBX in the NetVanta UC software, I'm going to then assign his new extension to one of the phones that's connected to the network. An ADTRAN IP712 is not configured yet, and so it shows up in this list. And then I can select 308 as the identity to assign to this phone. And then once I'm done and click OK, Melvin is now set up and ready to go in NetVanta UC. His mailbox is assigned. You can call his phone, and his phone will ring. If it doesn't answer, it will go to coverage, and his messages will be stored in Exchange server, all with the simple few clicks of the user interface within Active Directory. I'm going to switch back to the presentation here and just cover a little bit about the benefits of using an Active Directory linked configuration with NetVanta UC. It's important to note that it's not required to integrate your system for every user with Active Directory. In other words, not every user in the system has to be Active Directory link. You can have users that are locally managed, locally stored, and configured on the NetVanta UC box side by side with different users that are linked to users in Active Directory, and have a mix and match of both. Benefits of using locally managed users are not having to create and use up a CAL in the Active Directory, as well as it's quite applicable to users that might just have basic voicemail or utility phones in the network and so on. So let's look at benefits. Centralized user management. As I mentioned before, there's a single repository for user information, so you're not having to duplicate information across multiple systems, which means a lower total cost of ownership because there's reduced administration time for your IT administrators. And this can be done using the Active Directory Users and Computers console. Connecting to multiple NetVanta UC instances in a network, which means you can have multiple servers and users on different systems and still be able to manage these in a central location without having to start up and stop different client software instances. You can also enable and disable UC with the click of a checkbox. If a user is leaving the organization, you need to disable access to network resources, to their email, to their voicemail, turn off their phone. All of this can be done by disabling the user in Active Directory simply by right-clicking and selecting Disable Account. Because the system is integrated with Active Directory, we are merging the IT and telephony silos into a single silo. So administrators that are typically handling the data network can be trained with relatively little training to manage the telephony properties for your particular network as well. And doing so in a familiar interface means that the learning curve is shorter. The single sign-on capabilities means that users never have to worry about managing multiple passwords, trying to remember which password it is that they use for one system versus another, and they never have to log in. It means it is a streamlined experience for your users, making them happier, and it makes it easier for them to use the system. And one of the very important things about our Active Directory integration is the setup time. Because you can mass import information from Active Directory in advance or while you're configuring the system, it means that you can cut down on a significant amount of time that it takes to set up the system in the first place. There are tools available that allow you to import that information directly from Active Directory into a place where you can assign extensions, even phones, all in advance to setting up the system itself. So by the time you get to configuring the system, you import this file and everything gets configured in one shot. This concludes the presentation for the Active Directory integration. For more information or to see different feature demonstrations for NetVanta UC, please visit adtran.com/UC. Thanks for watching.